So hello and welcome, it's Neil Dougan here, and we're looking at Module 12, the scientific issues surrounding digestion. So we've quite a short video. We're going to focus on the main structures in the digestive system, and when we were talking about the philosophy we went much more into the consciousness stuff. We'll cover off a little bit of that again today, but specifically looking at how the structures within the body and the systems within the body for that matter alter based on some of these consciousness issues impacting on them. So we'll begin with the mouth, and we've already talked about the idea of the conditions within the mouth changing completely based on the sensory perception. So depending on what we're smelling and what we're tasting, what we're seeing and that type of thing, the mouth is responding in completely different ways. So the particular digestive juices that are introduced within the body are mixed in with all of the food and drink that we are taking in, and the digestion is already occurring. So the mouth is mainly involved in actually breaking all this stuff down. And the language that I'm using here needs to be thought about, because it's a very violent process. What we're actually doing to this food as we're eating it and digesting it is an act of violence in itself. So if we thought it was violent in the mouth, by the time it gets into the stomach, it's an extremely violent process that's going on in there. So all of the digestive system is coated with bacteria, fungus, viruses of all different kinds, and parasites as well. And nearly all of them are completely required and important for our physical functioning. And occasionally, you get a strain of a bacteria or a virus which will be particularly damaging. And indeed, when you get some of these viruses, if they end up proliferating in the wrong part of your body, then they can create problems. Same thing goes with parasites and bacteria as well. So the parasites, which are quite happily existing in some parts of the body, if they get into other parts of the body, they create all kinds of trouble. So the stomach is a very muscular structure, and it's doing this kind of thing with the contents of that you've just been eating. There's some dewatering going on in there as well, so there's an absorption process occurring, and further digestive juices are being added in to create the right type of mixture, which is easier for the rest of the digestive system to manage. There's a valve at the top of the stomach, and if you have certain types of consciousness issues occurring for you, then that valve will play up and you'll get it, reflux coming back up into your mouth. Once again, it's a matter of actually addressing the consciousness issues associated with that particular valve. Can bring tremendous relief to you. The bottom of the stomach, there's another valve which allows the chum, as it is now, to actually get away into the small intestine, and as it comes into the top end of the small intestine, it's called the duodenum. There's an area where the bile duct introduces further digestive juices into it. So this is another area of mixing. It's not quite so muscular. There's a certain amount of muscular activity going on here, and certainly the gallbladder is squirting these particular digestive juices into this area of the duodenum. Further on down the small intestine itself is an incredibly convoluted structure, so it has an enormous surface area. The surface area is completely coated with bacteria, and we've talked about this in the webinar series quite a bit, but I'll just say again that this coating of bacteria and fungus and viruses that are in there, and to an extent the parasites that are living in there as well, are all involved in the digestion of the food. So this is the further digestion of the food. So we have a nutrient transport chain, if you like, which includes these microorganisms. I'm going to talk much more about this in the next module, which is on the microbiome in any case. Further down through the small intestine, you reach the area where you have the appendix, and there's another valve there which allows the passage of the material from the small intestine into the colon at the appropriate time, so the body's controlling all of this activity. And indeed, if these valves aren't working properly, there can be all sorts of trouble, particularly if there's an allowance for the material from the colon to be making its way back into the small intestine. It can create all kinds of difficulties. However, many people come into the clinic to see me suffering from issues in this valve between the, it's called the ileocecal valve, and it's the valve between the small intestine and the large intestine, where it just cramps up. So we have a sort of like a seizure occurring within that valve. Now the valve technically should just be a one-way valve that would open whenever there's sufficient pressure to push material from the small intestine into the large intestine. However, it's so muscular, the tissue, that it's able to behave in an almost elective way. So it's not really elective, it's certainly not conscious mind elective. So we do a lot of work with that valve as well. So in fact all of the valves within the system we do work with. I mentioned in the philosophy section the importance of allowing the nutrients to pass across in the colon, and we have a completely different kind of plaque in here. So the bacterial population, and indeed the whole microflora population, in all of these different aspects of your digestive system is quite different. It's not necessarily so different in the species involved, but it's certainly different in terms of the population makeup. So we're expecting quite different population bases in these different places. This is another big area where we get interference from consciousness. So depending on what's happening in our consciousness, we can be encouraging the proliferation of certain of these microflora completely inappropriately in the wrong place. So we just have the wrong sort of population base altogether in these parts of the body. Just wanted to briefly speak about some of the diseases and processes that are occurring right at the very end of the digestive system. So one of them that's very common is hemorrhoids, which is a vein which gets out of control, and predominantly these can be either just at the anus or on the outside partly and on the inside partly, or indeed they can actually be further up inside the rectum as well. Extremely painful. I've actually suffered from them myself many years ago. I ended up having surgery for it. However, the tremendous consciousness associated with the formation of hemorrhoids, and had I known more about this type of work then, 20 odd years ago perhaps, I would have been able to do more about that in my own case. However, I can assure you it's something that you don't want to be having to go through that process of being, dealing with these things at all. But as I say, indeed, throughout the entire digestive system, in every case we're talking about issues of consciousness which are directly impacting on the physical health of these parts of the digestive system. So, I hope you found that useful, looking at some of these issues around the science of the digestive system. We could have gone into a lot more depth about the actual chemical processes and that type of thing. However, for the scale and scope of what we're talking about here within TRIM, it's not necessary to go into great detail about all of that. So thanks for watching, and make sure you do keep posting in the Facebook group, asking the questions, getting involved, and don't forget your journal entries as well. That journal work is very important. If you've got to the point where you look back and you say, well, actually for 3 or 4 of these modules I've not been doing those journal questions, well, go back and do them, because you'll find them very useful. So thanks for watching, and look out for the next module, which is on the microbiome. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.